Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kara, and I'm with the LTAP Center here at ODOT, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today's webinar is DBE Program Updates, and we're thrilled to have Lauren Purdy, Lynn Stevens, Jolita Stoltz, and David Walker as the presenters. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items to ensure a smooth webinar experience for everyone. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the questions panel on your screen. You can type your questions there, and they will be addressed during the Q&A session at the end. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have any issues, feel free to use the chat panel to communicate with our team, and we'll do our best to assist you. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all registered attendees after the session. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. It's my pleasure to hand it over to Lauren Purdy. Lauren, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. On behalf of all of us here at ODOT, including our director, Jack Marchbanks, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Lauren Purdy. I'm the Deputy Director of ODOT's Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, also known as the ODI Division. Our division was created in 2015, and I have been the Deputy Director of the division since its inception. Our mission in ODI is to increase the number of diverse businesses that do work with ODOT, and also to help increase our workforce and diversity of our workforce. We're pleased to present today's webinar, where we will give an overview of some of the many changes to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, or DBE program, that went into effect on May 9th, 2024. Our staff attended many meetings held by the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration and understand the importance of educating the DBE community, contractors, consultants, and other important stakeholders of the recent changes. The changes will be implemented gradually, and we hope today's webinar will provide you with valuable information as well as clarification and to answer any questions that you may have. On that point, if you have any questions today, I believe you can enter those into the chat. And even after today's webinar has concluded, if you have any lingering questions, please feel free to reach out to us, any of us that are on the webinar today, and we will be happy to assist you. Now I will turn things over to Lynn Stevens, the administrator of the Office of Outreach, who will give an overview of our division. Thank you very much and enjoy today's webinar.
Thank you, Lauren. Hello, everyone. As Lauren said, I'm Lynn Stevens, administrator for the Office of Outreach here at ODOT. Okay, I am so sorry, I was muted. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, I'll try it again. I am Lynn Stevens, administrator for the Office of Outreach here in the ODI division, and I'm happy to be here with you today. I've been with ODOT since about 2016, late 2016. It's been a pleasure here serving in our Office of Outreach. And for the agenda today, again, overview. We're going to do an overview of the ODI division really quickly, give you some background information on our DBE program and the updates, and then certification related updates are going to be provided by Jolita Stoltz, and goal attainment updates are going to be provided by David Walker. So with that, our Division of Opportunity, Diversity, and Inclusion, as you heard Lauren say, it was created in 2015. and she's been our Deputy Director since the beginning. And we have 3 offices within our ODI division: the Office of Business and Economic Opportunity, led by Deborah Green. She's Administrator. And there they handle all things related to our DBE and SBE certification, reporting requirements for the DBE program. They set goals, the DBE goals and EDGE goals on our ODOT projects, and oversee the DBE supportive services that are available to our certified DBE firms, and then the on-the-job training program, which includes the apprentice program, and fulfilling that goal on our ODOT projects. Our second office is the Office of Civil Rights Compliance, led by KT LaPlace, the administrator there, and they handle all things related to prevailing wage, certified payroll, commercially useful function, or CUF for short, Title VI, and then Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Services Act. And lastly, our Office of Outreach is where I reside, and we handle, we are a liaison for businesses seeking to do business with ODOT, who may need help finding their way, seeing where they may fit in with doing business with ODOT. So we're a resource, a liaison. We hold lots and lots of webinars, workshops, events throughout the state on the theme of doing business with ODOT, and becoming DBE or SBE certified. And then we also help with the workforce inclusion goals, the female and minority workforce inclusion goals on our ODOT projects. And within the Office of Outreach, we have a staff of 5, myself, and then we have 4 regional outreach managers throughout the state. So depending on where you reside in the state, where your business is located, you have a resource with our ODI division to reach out to with questions, comments, or if you need additional assistance. So Michelle Nuverman is serving in our Northwest Ohio region, Districts 1, 2, and 3. Larry Brown is serving in our Southwest Ohio region, Districts 7, 8, and 9. Jennifer Chris is in our Northeast Ohio region, serving Districts 4, 11, and 12. And Lorraine Stevens in our Central and Southeast Ohio area, serving Districts 5, 6, and 10. So feel free to take a snapshot of this screen if you need to, and reach out. Again, we're here as a resource, a liaison in your pursuit to do business with ODOT. And with that, that's our overview completed. I will turn things over to our colleague, Jalita Stoltz, so that she may begin the certification updates overview and make sure that she has, yeah, Jalita, you have the controls still. So take it away, Jalita. Thank you.
All right. So here's just a quick background on why we're here today. On April 9th, the U.S. Department of Transportation announced revisions to its rule for administering the DBE program. If you've been around for a while, you probably know that the notice of proposed rulemaking was published actually back in 2022. So almost a little under 2 years. We're here, we have the changes, and they rolled out the new rule really quickly. It went into effect on May 9th, 2024. The major objectives of the rule include modernizing existing principles to improve provisions for the benefits of program participants, reduce burdens on firms and recipients, grow firm capacity and owner wealth, improve program integrity, visibility, and data collected by USDOT. They've updated a lot of the forms for applicants and certified firms, and we want to emphasize that there's no grandfathering of previous requirements. Now I will get into specific requirements. All right. So first of all, I guess I should say I'm really excited to be here today and see that we had such a large turnout. I think we had almost 300 people registered, and it looks like we're a little over 200 right now, and that's good because we have a lot of information to share with you today. Since May 9th, we have been working really hard implementing the changes with the rules, and I'm going to discuss a lot of the changes that impact our firms today. But since we have a variety of companies and stakeholders on the call, I wanted to start by briefly explaining what a DBE is. DBEs are for-profit small businesses. Okay, somebody just changed my slide. Sorry. I think we're having a little bit of glitch here. Okay. Again, DBEs are for-profit, it's okay, for-profit small businesses. The Small Business Administration is who defines a small business by specific NAICS codes. NAICS codes are 6-digit numbers associated with a work type. They are also subject to a DBE program gross receipts cap unless a firm only participates in FAA-funded projects. The firm has to be majority owned by someone who is socially and economically disadvantaged, and also managed and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged owners. Many requirements for the program have stayed the same, but how we evaluate ownership, management, and control has changed in some capacity, and I'm going to get into those details in the next few slides. Looks like there's just a small delay in my slides advancing when I click. There we go. The first topic we'll discuss is social and economic disadvantage. The updated rule introduced the acronym SEDO, which stands for Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Owners. I will be using this term throughout the presentation. It does come up quite often, so it's important that you know that. The presumptive disadvantaged groups in the definition of a SEDO did not change. These groups are still women, Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, and subcontinent Asian Americans. The definition also includes any additional groups found to be disadvantaged by the SBA, which allows for some flexibility if there are additions to those groups. There were changes, however, to the Code of Federal Regulation on evaluating non-presumptive disadvantage. Previously, the regulations included an Appendix E that dictated how a person would describe their disadvantage if they're not in a presumed group. The updated rules removed Appendix E and added details into the code sections under 26.67D, which explicitly require a personal narrative to explain the applicant's experiences and circumstances within American society that render them disadvantaged. I'm going to go into more details about the personal narrative on the next slide. You see a lot of text here. There's a lot of information. I'm not going to read every bullet point now, but I will provide an overview of what's required. And I recommend that if you're submitting a personal narrative to read the regulation in full on part 26.67D or get with the Office of Outreach to discuss. So prior to the rule change, to qualify under an individual determination of disadvantage, certifiers had to consider education, employment, and business history. Now the applicant must address at least one of those areas without necessarily needing to address discrimination in all of the areas. The individual has to identify one objective basis for the discrimination. This could be potentially a disability, or residing in a location in an area isolated from mainstream society, but it could also be a wide variety of other statuses or conditions. The applicant has to ensure that their personal narrative clearly explains how their status or condition prompted the prejudices or discrimination and how the resulting acts cause them harm. Applicants do not have to have filed a formal complaint of discrimination to qualify, but if they have, they should include that. The more detailed and specific the narrative, the easier it is to analyze and determine if the burden of proof was met. In these cases where an applicant is making an individual showing of disadvantage, the burden of proof is on the applicant, so the narrative is very important. Those who are applying under an individual determination of disadvantage will still have to provide a personal net worth statement, and they can also submit any other relevant information about their economic status to support the disadvantage. Speaking of economic disadvantage, there were substantial changes to the personal net worth requirements that will positively impact a SEDO in the ability to effectively plan for retirement and possibly allow a firm to remain DBE certified for longer. The P&W was increased from 1.32 million to 2.047 billion. There is also now a built-in system in the regulation to adjust the P&W every 3 years. P&W can only be revised upwards and never downwards, so it is likely in 3 years we may see an increase in the net worth. But one of the most significant changes was the exclusion of retirement accounts in the calculation of personal net worth. And they did this to help support the wealth building initiative within the DBE program and not penalize DBE owners for planning for their future. In addition to those changes, the P&W form has changed, and it requires more details to help certifiers analyze the information. It also requires that applicants provide supporting documentation on the various areas on the worksheet to help the certifiers review the form. So it is a little bit longer, but it does seem a little bit easier to follow. And we do have that posted on our website if you need to review that. And we can also send it out if you're interested. You can always put that in the chat if you need it. So while the actual calculation of the P&W largely stayed the same, we did have just a few changes and clarifications. But I did want to cover some things that already existed just so that we have some clarity. The P&W is still based on an individual. It does not include a spouse's share of joint assets. It still excludes the primary residence and the equity in the applicant firm. And as just mentioned, it now excludes retirement accounts. As a reminder for those who may own a business other than the applicant firm, P&W does include equity in those business interests. So not the applicant firm, but if you have other businesses, those are included. The new rule also clarified how the contents of a primary residence should be counted, stating that the total value of the contents needs to be included unless the primary residence is shared with a spouse or a domestic partner. If you share your residence in these cases, the CEDO can exclude 50% of the value of the contents. They also confirmed that motor vehicles, including watercraft and ATVs, should be included, and this can be based on title or by the principal operator. Lastly, there's a 2-year look-back period on transferred assets. If there are assets exceeding $20,000 that have been transferred, those may be included in the P&W calculation unless they meet specific guidelines. It is important to note that economic disadvantage can be rebutted even if somebody has a personal net worth of less than 2.047 million. The rule previously laid out 6 factors that could be considered in these evaluations. The updated regulations are less prescriptive on how to evaluate wealth and instead state that the certifier must prove that a reasonable person would not consider the individual economically disadvantaged. And they do specifically state that the certifier can consider any assets, income, free use of those assets and income, or ready access to their benefits, or any other trappings of wealth that the certifier finds relevant. There are absolutely no assets, including retirement assets, income, equity, or any other exclusions, and there are no limitations on inclusion. Generally, a broad analysis can suffice because it is based on the reasonable person's perspective who does not have access to all the details of someone's financial status. There were also some changes to the business size standard requirements with the updated rule. First, it's now codified that we use 5 years of gross receipts to determine compliance with the SBA size standards for NAICS codes. This has been the case for about 2 years now, but it's now written in the regulation. The DBE program size standard cap remains unchanged at a 3-year average of gross receipts. So we're still going to be looking at 3-year and 5-year when we're evaluating you at initial certification and during the annual declaration of eligibility. The overall program size standard has been adjusted for inflation several times in the past few years, but it currently remains at 30.40 million averaged over 3 years. One clarification in the new rule that's going to impact both current and future DBEs is that gross receipts should be reported on a cash basis. So this means that the documents you submit with your annual declaration of eligibility may actually differ from your federally filed taxes if you're filing on an accrual basis. The three documents listed on the screen are considered safe harbor documents by US DOT on what we can accept to verify gross receipts. All right, now we will transition to discussing some of the changes and requirements regarding the ownership of a DBE. First, the updated rule did clarify that CDOs may only qualify for certification if there is only one layer of ownership above the potential DBE firm. So this means there can be a parent company and a subsidiary, but there cannot be a grandparent company. The new CFR, it provides several examples to help explain this under 49 CFR 26.63B. I'm not going to go into detail on those examples in this presentation, but I'm happy to share those with you after the meeting if you like. Just leave a note in the chat box and I can get that over to you. I think they gave about 6 or 8 examples in there on a variety of situations. Additionally, the updated regulations, they now focus on acquisition, proportion, and maintenance of the initial investment in the company. And they provide substantial detail on these items and how we need to review them. So first and foremost, an owner has to show that they made a significant cash contribution to acquire ownership. That contribution must have been irrevocably parted with. While you may invest equipment in the business, there also has to be a cash component. The investment with equipment alone would not be adequate. The CDO's investment needs to be proportional to any other person's investment in the company, and it also has to be maintained. So this may mean that you've been in business for a long period of time, maybe 10 years, and the 49% owner, let's say they put in an additional $50,000. If you as the CDO do not also invest a proportional amount, then you may no longer qualify for the program. Another change is to gifted ownership. The firm can only qualify if the person who made the gift becomes uninvolved with the firm immediately and in all capacities. An example of this would be a parent who is about to retire. If they were to gift their ownership entirely to their son or their daughter, if they remained involved in the business for a period of time, the firm would be ineligible until that parent is no longer involved. Loan proceeds can be considered investments, but only if at least 15% of the cost of ownership was paid with personal cash. Certifiers also have to heavily scrutinize the loan to determine that it's real and enforceable, and they have listed several conditions that have to be reviewed that include that the CDO is a sole debtor, the firm cannot be party to the loan in any capacity, the CDO cannot rely on the company's credit or its resources to pay the loan or finance the investment. The loan also has to have required payments of principal and interest, and the loan must permit prepayment, including refinancing. If the lender were to forgive or cancel all or part of the debt, or the CDO defaults, the entire debt finance portion of the CDO's purchase or capital contribution would no longer be an investment. And we know that that doesn't happen very often, but with some of the loans around COVID, that could be the case. Now getting into control, the control section in the Code of Federal Regulations was significantly revised. The regulation no longer refers to specifics on family businesses, requirements on licensing, outside employment, or differences in salaries or pay. It should be noted, though, that while these factors have been removed outright from the regulation, these are still factors that are looked at and considered. But as certifiers, we are more or less looking at the big picture when evaluating files to determine if the CDO is the one who is running the show and is the ultimate decision maker. When we talk about ultimate decision maker, it does permit the ability to delegate administrative activities or operational oversight to a non-CEDO or an individual. Still, at least one CEDO has to retain unilateral power to fire the delegates, and it's important that the chain of command is evident to all parties in the company. So this means that the CEDO can assign some tasks or responsibilities to a non-CEDO employee or a manager. However, they have to have ultimate control and supervision over that person, and they must be able to remove them if necessary. It also needs to be evident that everyone in the company and those with whom the firm transacts business know who is in charge and who reports to whom. So that hierarchy has to be evident to everyone who works within the firm and outside of the firm. It's also stated that the governance provisions of the business cannot require a non-CEDO concurrence or consent to transact business on behalf of the firm. So this means that you must not need the approval of any non-CEDO partner, shareholder, board member, or any other person to make decisions for your business. The only exception is bylaws or other governing provisions. They can require that non-CEDO consent is required for extraordinary actions, such as selling the company or dissolving the partnership. In the case of multiple CEDOs, only one has to have an overall understanding of the business and its operations. The evaluation of control in a business is going to vary industry from industry and potentially firm to firm based on the circumstances. It's all about looking at that big picture and ensuring that somebody who's socially and economically disadvantaged is the one that is running the business. The next topic that was substantially changed, and it was for the benefit of DBE firms, I think many of you on the call are going to be very happy about this, was interstate certification. So the term home state was actually removed throughout the regulation. Instead, another new acronym, we will be referring to jurisdiction of original certification as a JOC. It's most likely a firm is still going to apply in the state that they reside in or their principal place of business. The principal place of business definition is still included in the regulation, and it means the location where the individuals who manage the firm's day-to-day operations spend most of their working hours. But it's not necessarily required that you start your DBE certification there. You can actually apply to any state directly if you're not certified in your what we used to call home state, but that state has to agree to process your application. And if they do, they'll be known as your JOC. So a good reason could be that you have no desire to do DBE work in the state where your primary place of business is, but you're trying to get certified in another state that has contract opportunities that fit your business. It's just important to note that it's still up to the UCP agency to agree to process that file. One of the main large changes in interstate certification is that it's now going to be expedited for firms. So every single state has to certify an interstate certification request within 10 business days of receiving the required documents. And now required documents from the firm is very limited. It's limited to a cover letter identifying the JOC, all UCPs which the firm is certified, proof of certification, which is simply an electronic image of the directory, and a new declaration of eligibility. And this form has been standardized and it's now used for multiple purposes, and I'll talk more about that later. So a state can still do a full review of a firm, but only after they've been added to their directory. And in the past, many states required a firm to provide its entire file from the JOC to the state. So we would have firms reaching out to us to get a copy of their application in order to send to, 5, 6, 7 states. The new rule actually has shifted that burden onto the JOC, so us, to provide that information. So if you apply in Kentucky and they want a full copy of their file, they will certify you, and then they will reach out to Ohio and we will provide that file directly to them. Another significant improvement for DBE firms is that the JOC date will now apply to every state in which the firm is certified regarding when you file your annual declaration of eligibility. So we are currently in the process of determining how we will collect all the JOC dates for our out-of-state firms. And our certified firms, you may find that other states are reaching out to you to ask for your original JOC date. But in essence, DBE firms now only have to remember one day to file a standard form wherever they're certified and provide documentation of the gross receipts on a cash basis. So it should make submitting your annual information much easier, especially for our firms that are certified in 5 or 10 states. I'm having trouble with my slide here. Wayne, can you click it and see if it'll go for you? All right, thank you. Just so you're aware, if you're certified outside of Ohio, you want to request certification with us. These are the 4 steps to get certified. You just need to email your cover letter with the electronic image of the JOC directory and the declaration of eligibility to us at dot.sdbe@dot.ohio.gov, or you can upload that link or upload it using the link on our website, which I will happily send to you if you want to send me an email or leave it in the chat, either way. So going on to our next slide, while it is now a lot easier for interstate certification, decertifications will impact a firm much more holistically within the program. So a decertification proceeding can be initiated by any UCP the firm is certified in. Now, though, a UCP has to notify all other certifying agencies that they intend to issue a notice of intent to remove a firm, and those other states have the opportunity to weigh in on the removal. However, concurrence is not necessary. If you are removed from a state, the firm has to be removed in all states it is certified in without additional decertification proceedings. So if you're certified with 10 states and another state does not believe you qualify for the program anymore, they will have to alert all of the other 9 states, get their opinion, and then move forward with decertification proceedings. And at the conclusion of a hearing, if you are removed, they will notify all the other states you're certified in, and you will be removed from those states as well. This does not apply to firms that are removed due to failure to submit the annual declaration of eligibility. So that's important to note. In the next slide, we're going to get into more details about decertification and the updated procedures, because there have been changes to those as well. The department has issued, looks like somehow our slide got closed. I'll give Lynn a second to get that brought back up. We're on slide 21, Lynn. Thank you. So the department's issued many new safeguards during decertification proceedings. As always, we have to state and explain each reason for decertification clearly. Previously, our letters in Ohio would give firms 30 days to notify us if they want a hearing. Moving forward, the notice of intent letters will include a hearing date, and the firm will be required to let us know within 10 days of the letter if they want a hearing. The date that's in the letter is not final if the DBE is unable to attend on that date, but the hearing has to take place within 45 days of the letter being issued. So there isn't a lot of flexibility in the date. The hearing has to be between the 30th day and the 45th day from the notice of intent. The final decision from the hearing, after the hearing has occurred, has to be issued within 30 days of the hearing date, which is also a little bit shorter time frame than we're used to working with. The hearings do continue to be informal, and they are now required to be recorded in some manner. So it could be written, audio, video. The hearings can be in person or virtual, and during decertification hearings, the firm does remain certified. Moving on, the next slide, we will talk about suspensions and the changes in those processes. The updated regulations have defined mandatory and elective suspensions. A firm has to be suspended if there's clear and credible evidence that it is involved in fraud or serious criminal activity. And operating authorities, such in our case, like Federal Highway, they can also direct us to suspend a firm as well under the mandatory options. Elective suspensions are still available. These are meant to be used if there are threats to the integrity of the DBE program. So some potential causes for suspensions could be the death or the incarceration of a CETO. However, it is noted that elective suspensions are also allowed for firms that do not submit their annual declaration of eligibility in a timely manner. So that is also an option. During suspensions, the firm has the burden of production, and that means you must produce evidence to argue the suspension, while certifiers have the burden of proof to show that the suspension is valid and that certification should be removed. So the example given above, the death of an owner or the incarceration of an owner, the firm would need to produce evidence that the company is still managed and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And this evidence would have to be given in writing or during a summary suspension hearing, which is a new area of suspensions. The processing has changed, and it now requires that a hearing is scheduled upon a suspension. So in the past, we would suspend the firm, we would do a review, determine if they still qualify, and either reinstate them, or we would potentially go to decertification proceedings. And then the firm would have the chance for a hearing. Now there's a much quicker turnaround. Suspensions actually can only last for 30 days. And so a hearing has to take place at least 15 days after a letter is issued, but no more than 25 days after the date of the notice. If a firm that is being suspended does not confirm within 10 days, they lose their right to a hearing. And if the firm does not acknowledge the notice within 15 days, they forfeit their certification. Suspension hearings are actually required to be virtual, so there will be no in-person suspension hearings, and this is supposed to help speed up the time frame. But the firm does remain suspended during the proceedings. It is also important to note that if a firm is removed due to a suspension, the decertification does not apply to the other states, and the other states may have to have their own decertification proceedings. I've covered a lot. I still have a little bit more to go. There are some additional items I did want to discuss that don't easily fall into some of those other boxes. So first, the regulation now requires that a firm has operations in the business for which it seeks certification at the time it applies. So we're talking about both new applications and the addition of NAICS codes. We do not certify intentions or plans. This does not necessarily mean you have to have contracts, but you would have to show that you are operating, that you're, it could be that you're actively bidding on contracts and that you have the equipment and everything you need to move forward. It is a judgment call on the certifier's side, though, to determine if you are in operation. The second bullet point, just noting that if your firm is denied or decertified, USDOT has reduced the time to appeal from 90 days to 45 days, which it should still give you ample time to submit. Additionally, USDOT has removed all notary requirements, and now you're just signing under perjury, which should be a benefit to your firm. You don't have to go track down a notary. I know it's not as easy as it used to be. I want to emphasize the next bullet point, that the regulations only require notifications of adverse action by email. So please ensure that contact information is up to date and that you review your emails in a timely manner. So now if you're suspended, we only have to notify you by email. And as I said, if you don't confirm or acknowledge within 15 days, you forfeit your certification. So it is really important that your contact information is up to date. Another new addition to the CFR is that a certifying agency may notify and allow an owner to cure issues that prevent certification. such as updating documents to reflect current circumstances or refinancing loans that conflict with some of the ownership investment requirements that I talked about before. It is not mandatory that we do this, but it is allowable. A good example would be you got a boilerplate template from the internet and you didn't realize that it required consent from the non-CETO in the company, and you are already operating that way, but your documents don't support that. So we would let you know, and you could make those changes. There were also some changes to on-site reviews. There will now be an audio recording of in-person site visits and a video audio recording of virtual on-site visits. We kind of had already started this, but now the regulation requires it, and failure to consent to recording or to move forward with a recorded interview will prompt a denial of the application. The regulation does formally allow both in-person and virtual on-site visits at the discretion of the certifier. Here in Ohio, we lean toward in-person, but there may be times where we opt for virtual visits. The updated rule also limits the days to extend the processing of an application to 30 days. Previously, that was 60. And then lastly, as I kind of referenced before, USDOT has standardized the annual no change declaration of eligibility to a declaration of eligibility form, which I'm going to discuss what that process looks like now in Ohio over the next couple of slides. So most of our certified firms, they're familiar with what our one-span sign form looks like that we use to collect annual declarations. This page probably looks familiar. When you go to our website and you click on the link to submit the annual no change, it brings up this form. I'm going to walk you quickly through the process just so you know, since this has changed. But once you get to this page, fill in all the required information. I would also include title and company and click submit. And that will bring us to the e-sign disclosures and consent. Typically, you'll get an email that gives you a link to then get to this page. So you may have to check your email and your spam for that. But once you click on the link, you're going to click that you read and agree to the terms and accept that. And the next page, we have some new instructions. So just explaining that you need to obtain documentation of your gross receipts calculated on a cash basis. And there are additional instructions that show you how to actually upload those documents. This is one of the issues we find firms run into. They sign the document, but they forget to do their upload. So remember, you click the up arrow on the top left side of the page, and you can click there and upload any of your required documents. Once you do that, you will see the declaration of eligibility. This is the new standard form. This is the top portion of it. You're going to put in your name, title, and name of firm, and you also check the boxes for the groups that you hold yourself out to be. You can click more than one box if needed. And on the bottom of the form, you're just going to click to sign and then confirm. So once you've done that, you will get the notification that says thank you for signing. You can review and download your documents, and we get them on our end. That declaration of eligibility you just saw is the same declaration of eligibility for interstate applications and new applications. So it's one form used for multiple purposes. So that same declaration of eligibility you will be submitting to every state that you're certified in. So you can just kind of send out copies, or in the case of an electronic submission like we have, you will have to go in and sign. All right, so that concludes the DBE specific changes, but I wanted to touch briefly on airport concessions disadvantaged business enterprises, also known as ACDBEs. While the definition hasn't been updated, to briefly explain what an ACDBE is, if you're not aware, it's a small for-profit business that serves the traveling public within an airport. This could be a bank, car rental companies, food and beverage vendors, or other vendors that provide merchandise in the airport. You walk in, you see your Chick-fil-A, your bookstores, all of those are concessions. The small business in this case is actually defined by the ACDBE program cap, and it does vary by industry, but they don't use the small business administration caps. One of the changes to the program was that it now disallows certification of a firm as an ACDBE if the firm intends to perform activities solely related to renovations, repairs, and construction of a concession facility. So this may impact some of our firms that are currently ACDBE certified. Most of them will probably have both DBE and ACDBE designation and make them no longer eligible. And this is because those activities cannot count toward ACDBE goals. So there is really no benefit to your firm having that certification. Outside of that, most of the changes just help to align ACDBE program with the DBE program definitions, since they follow the same certification procedures with those differences in size standards. As I wrap up this portion, I just wanted to emphasize some key takeaways. I went over a lot of information. There are many changes with the program that we're all working hard to implement. As a stakeholder, an applicant, or a certified firm, it's essential to be aware of these changes. Everyone needs to ensure that they're using the correct forms, especially if you're applying for certification. Those are all on our website. It's a new uniform certification application and personal net worth. Our certified firms need to ensure that gross receipts are being submitted on a cash basis with their annual declaration of eligibility. And lastly, as I mentioned at the very beginning, there is no grandfathering in of old requirements. So all of our firms are subject to review as time permits to determine ongoing eligibility with the new rule. Everyone has to adhere to the new requirements. This isn't anything that's going to happen soon, but just know as you're submitting your notice of changes or your NAICS code request, we may get an updated on-site review, and just ensure that we're still in compliance with the program. And to conclude, while this webinar is focused on the new rule, I wanted to announce, I'm very excited about this, that DBE, ACDBE, and SBE certification will soon reside in B2G Now, which will provide a more streamlined and efficient process for applicants. We are likely looking at the beginning of September for this milestone. They're almost done building the online applications. We will start sending out announcements in the next 4 to 6 weeks on next steps. B2G Now will be providing training to vendors on the system. Many of you are probably already using the system with other cities and municipalities. And if so, there's not going to be a lot that you need to do on your end. But if you're not already in there, no worries. We are working to ensure there's a seamless transition between our current way of working with you and getting onboarded into B2G Now. So if you see an email from OhioDOT@dbesystem.com, it is us, it's not spam. Like I said, those notifications will start coming out. You'll start hearing from the Office of Outreach. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be great for our DBE firms. And with that, it is the end of my section on updates on DBE certification. I know I talked about a lot, so feel free to put your questions in the chat. I'm happy to answer those. You can also reach out to me directly at the information on the screen. Alternatively, you can always email dot.sdbe@dot.ohio.gov. That's our general email. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn that over to David Walker, who will provide updates on the goal attainment section.
Thank you very much, Julita. Could you hear me okay?
I can hear you good.
Good. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to advance the slide to the next slide.
Okay. Okay, you should have control, so let's see.
No.
Okay,
All
I
right.
just did that one, so maybe try again. Let's see. Okay, there
we go. Okay. So yes, I'm David Walker. I am the Goal Attainment Manager at ODOT. I'm also, the Accountability Manager at ODOT and the Goal Attainment Section Head. And so it's great to be here with everyone today. Julita gave an overview of all the changes that are happening in the certification realm, and Now, if you are certified and you're working on a contract that has a contract goal, this section is for you. Also, if you're a prime, if you're a bidder, this section is going to be of interest to you as well. So I'll go over some of the major changes that have been, I should say that this is all preliminary. We are working through the changes. Even we have a plan in place with Federal Highway Administration to get all these changes in process and place. And it's not something that we can just do overnight because there's just a lot of thought that has to go into all of this. So, but many of these changes you've heard about because they are coming from USDOT, and now we have to make them take effect in our contracts. The major changes would be the new DBE distributor category, bidders list requirements to be submitted with the bid, information about all DBEs and non-DBEs who wish to participate in the bid. This is on all federal aid contracts, whether or not there is a DBE goal. There will be, of course, revisions to proposal notes 7 and 13. Proposal note 7 just kind of gives you, it's about DBE trucking and supply, and so we'll make sure that that gets updated with the new distributor and regular dealer requirements. But proposal note 13 is the big one that deals with contract goal attainment. So many changes may be needed. And as part of that will be a new DBE affirmation form. And that we hope that makes it a lot easier for people. We hope that it will be an online form and it will provide a much more user-friendly process. Although we do have to ask for a little bit more information. So moving on to, let's see, if it'll go to the next slide here. Yes, okay. The first topic will be the MSB distributor category. As you may already know, an MSB or a distributor is a new category of supplier in the DBE program, and that provides 40% credit, including transportation costs. It's good, but not as good as the 60% credit that comes with regular dealer. That's still going to be in place. So to be a distributor, you have to have the right NAICS code. That should be familiar to everybody. But if all you have is 425120 wholesale trade agents and brokers, that's not going to be the correct code. The correct code would have to be something else in the wholesale retail list of the different codes. But that's something you would work with the certification folks on, and of course your outreach staff if you have questions about that, if you need to get additional codes. So it's important to note you must be certified in the correct code, and you also not drop shipping. Some people are saying, well, oh, this allows DBEs to drop ship. In a way it does, but the DBE can't just place an order with a non-DBE and then have that non-DBE deliver the materials to the prime. The delivery must be done by a third party. So, and in addition, the DBE distributor must take ownership of the materials at the point of origin and then be responsible for them until they arrive at the destination, at, like, say, the job site. So you have to take ownership, you have to be, you have to have insurance that covers the materials, anything above and beyond what the DBE's carrier will be responsible for. But do you have to have inventory? You do not. So regular dealer category, we still have the regular dealer category. And let's see here. Here we go. Sort of, there is definitely a delay with changing the slide, but oh, there we go. Okay. Now, regular dealer category will still have 60% credit included, and that's a change because it used to be that we would provide 60% credit and then 100% credit for transportation costs. But with the new rule, it's just 60% credit across the board, including transportation costs. So our plan to make things easier for both bidders, primes, and DBEs is that we will categorize all materials, or at least the ones predominantly used on our projects or contracts, as either bulk, specialty, or neither. So why does that matter? Well, bulk materials are those that the DBE they don't have to have inventory, they can deliver those items with their own owned and operated trucks, and they can get 60% credit. Specialty items are treated like bulk items, but the DBE must deliver them. Because those have limited shelf life or have to be custom ordered. But if they're neither a bulk item or a specialty item, then the DBE must have inventory of that item. And in the new final rule, the USDOT has determined that each recipient of funds must have a system for determining basically the inventory of a DBE and the capacity of that DBE to be a regular dealer. So if all the DBE is doing is bulk and specialty items, again, that DBE can just deliver the items. But if for non-bulk, non-specialty items, that we will have to review that DBE's inventory and make a determination on the capacity. And we'll be looking at the DBE's inventory records, and let's see here. Yep, there we go. Looking at the inventory records and doing some questionnaires, and we may actually do some on-site visits. So, but I do think the vast majority of the materials on our projects are bulk and specialty. So overall, then, not too much change on the current way we do things with regular dealers. So I have some examples. So if a prime needs materials, all these examples start, the prime needs materials and identifies that a DBE could provide them. Prime could be it most likely will be the prime that's bidding on a construction project. The prime that goes out and gets quotes from DBEs that are certified in the correct NAICS codes for the material. And then the prime selects a DBE and verifies that this DBE will take ownership of the material while it is still at the manufacturer's facility, and then make arrangements with the freight company to pick up the material from the manufacturer and deliver it to the job site. And that DBE will assume all risk for loss or damage that is not already covered by the carrier's insurance. If the DBE quotes $100,000, that's $95,000 for the material and $5,000 for transportation. What would count towards the DBE contract goal? Well, 40%, $40,000. Pretty straightforward. I would just note that with this example and the next one, it is very important that the prime does not just make any assumptions without, verifying. Ask questions of the DBEs. Make sure that you are on the same page with what the DBE is doing. Because if the DBE doesn't do these things, if they say, well, we're just going to have the manufacturer ship it, that credit will not be there with it will not actually be granted. So it's very important that the prime or the bidder is aware of how the distributor or how the DBE will be handling things. So now a bulk specialty example, same assumptions at the top. The prime needs materials, prime gets quotes, DBEs have the right NAICS codes. Now, if the DBE will take ownership, just like before, but this time, if the DBE is actually going to pick up the material and deliver it to the job site with its owned and operated truck, that's 60%. That's better than the distributor 40%. So, and that's kind of like how it is today on our regular dealer projects. So my next example, sort of last example, is the non-bulk or specialty example. Again, prime needs materials, gets quotes, selects a DBE, and then here's where I would say some very important verification has to take place by the prime. Make sure that this DBE has had its inventory reviewed by ODOT. Then make sure that that DBE has at least 51% of the material needed for the transaction in its inventory. That's key when you're talking about non-bulk, non-specialty materials, because it's very important that at least 51% of the material be in that DBE's inventory. The remaining inventory can be, as long as it's of the general character as the material that's in inventory, it can come from elsewhere. It can come like from the manufacturer. It can even be drop shipped, but as long as that 51% of the material is in inventory, the whole thing would count at 60% in that case. There's obviously more complicated examples, which I'm not going to get into today, of where, say, not less than 51% of the materials in inventory. But suffice it to say that the key here is that 51%. But again, that's for non-bulk, non-specialty materials. So, of course, there's always, on my next slide, the good old manufacturer. Those are the DBEs that get 100% credit for the materials they manufacture. A new twist in the final rule was that when a DBE makes minor modifications to the materials, the DBE is not considered a manufacturer. Minor modifications are those additional changes to a manufactured product that are small in scope and add minimal value to the final product. But I will say that when the definition of manufacturing includes blending or modifying raw materials or assembling components to create a product to meet contract specifications, that it seems on one hand to be a pretty liberal definition, and it's just that they don't want it to be just something that's minor, small in scope, or just adds minimal value. And I think we're just going to have to decide some of these on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, it's something that, again, like I said, don't just assume that something will get that 100% credit. But you can always ask, and we can look into it. But I don't foresee that we're going to be doing a lot of rejection, but it's just keep in mind that it's a possibility that we may just determine that something is not truly enough of a change to consider to be counted at 100% credit. Okay, so moving on to, we've talked a lot about these their materials and suppliers. Bidders list is a big change. We have been doing surveys of the industry to do our bidders list for US DOT purposes. This is a big change because for federal aid contracts, anything with federal funds, whether it has a DBE goal or not, that bidder will have to submit with their bid that bidders list. And that it's a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, the bidder is the one submitting the bid, but what's on the bidders list would be all the DBEs and non-DBEs who've expressed interest in working or supplying materials for that bidder on that contract. And so why do we do this? Not just because of it's a requirement, but we also want to improve our understanding of all the firms that are interested in working on our contracts. Helps us get a better understanding of this. And like I said, it's not a new requirement, but getting it at this granular of a level, this contract specific level, is new. And we also have to submit the information to US DOT annually. We're working on a process to make this requirement as painless as possible for bidders. Not sure exactly what that's going to look like. It may be something that you can do with BidExpress. Most likely it may be just something that we give you a link to a different form that you would submit. And we will be, as to the extent possible, a little bit forgiving with this, I think, at least in the beginning. But we don't want to make it the rule that we are getting bids without bidders lists. We want to get those bidders lists from all bidders, and we don't want to really be in the position of saying that something is non-responsive because the bidders list was not included. So I would just recommend for this, just keep track, just keep a spreadsheet, keep a list, jot down who's expressed interest. And an example here of what we will be talking about collecting, this would be like a requirement in this sample project for the DBE and non-DBE firms that expressed interest. The name, the address, the NAICS code. Yes, you have to figure out the NAICS codes in general that would apply. Total quote, if there is a quote amount. Used in bid, yes or no. So like if you were planning on using this sub or supplier in your bid. And then for non-DBEs, because we already have this information for DBEs, the race and gender of the firm's majority owner, the age of the firm, and the annual gross receipts range. We're not going to ask for something super specific there, but we'll provide some ranges, and that's going to be just something that you'll need to collect. So this is, again, it's not an ODOT specific requirement. This is part of the final rule. So, but it will help us understand the contracting environment all that much better. So revisions to Proposal Note 13 and Proposal Note 7. We're looking at definitely one of the changes from the final rule that might be good news for a lot of primes is that the request for consent to terminate/reduce a DBE commitment is no longer required when ODOT is the cause of the reduction. Instead, we are asking the prime to send a change order to the DBE with a copy to ODOT of what is now different that the DBE is going to, usually it's going to be like doing something less of something. Could be final quantities, could be a non-performance. And we may also have to verify if we question that ODOT truly is the cause, but that's somewhat of a paperwork reduction. There's another key item in Proposal Note 13, and that's the impact of decertification on contract goal attainment. There's always been an impact from when a firm loses its certification while they're working on your contract, but we're adding that to Proposal Note 13 so it's clearer. And one of the, I would say though, the really new thing to be very aware of is that if the reason for the decertification is that the DBE was merged with a non-DBE or purchased by a non-DBE, that from that point forward, none of the DBE's work counts towards the goal. So hopefully that's not something that we see that often, but if that is something that happens, just, because usually most of the time, if there's a decertification, the DBE still gets to count towards the contract goal until they fulfill its contract. Lynn, you might want to plug in your computer. Okay, so, but again, the important thing to keep in mind, there's those if you're DBE, and I would say if you are DBE and you are considering merging with a non-DBE or letting your, it should be, it's important to let your prime know that. We are working with our partners to make updates on the proposal notes. They have to go to the Heavy Highway Spec Committee for review and approval, and only after they're approved, we'll start incorporating them into contracts as of a certain date. And that's when all of the stuff that I've talked about will go into effect. Until then, it's the status quo. So, quick glimpse of what a new DBE affirmation form might look like. We are working on this now, and I'm pretty excited about it because it's an area that, right now it's just a Word document and there's lots of room for error. This would be an online form. We would have electronic signature. Oh, can anybody hear me okay? I'm getting a,
Yes.
okay, good, all right. Sorry, I couldn't be heard, but okay. So online form with electronic signature to hopefully, and totals and percentages calculated automatically. So that's going to be really good. It's going to incorporate questions that the USDOT provided us on their DBE regular dealer distributor affirmation form. We're going to just make sure that that's incorporated to the extent possible. And we do plan on testing it to make sure that also to the extent possible, people are happy with it, and that we want it to be definitely an improvement on the paper form while also providing us some more detail that we need. So again, more to come, lots more to come here. There will be new and revised forms, revised proposal notes. We're going to do more webinars, more trainings to make sure everybody's on the same page. And of course, notices to industry with specific dates when the new requirements will be taking effect. And with that, my contact information you see there. Please feel free to email me or call with any questions you may have, or answer them or ask them in the chat. I will turn it over now, I believe, to Lynn.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Laura, I think we are going to Q&A now, everyone. Thanks for your undivided attention. Hopefully this was helpful, but if you do have questions, we have a chat box. It should be on your screen somewhere where you can type a question. So Kara's going to be our moderator for the questions. So are there any questions yet, Kara, that we can help answer?
Before we do that, can I make my clarification?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. So I accidentally said the wrong size standard in my presentation. I apologize. It was adjusted to 30.72 million. So I wanted to make sure. Luckily, my team, they're on top of it. They sent me a message. I was like, oh, okay. My mistake.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, we do have a few questions that have been asked as the meeting has gone on. So our first question is, what if you have filed a tax extension? How does that impact the yearly declaration?
Yeah, I hope to get a little bit more clarification on this from USDOT, but most likely you would need to produce some sort of documentation on your gross receipts for the year, even if you haven't filed your taxes.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we have a compliment, great recap and presentation. And this attendee is asking, well, they're saying that they would love to have these slides as a reminder of what has changed. Will they be available?
Yeah, I think we can definitely make it available. I will make the change on the gross receipts so that it's accurate. And I don't know if it's easier to send it out to the whole group or just to the individuals who requested?
So I can answer that question. You are welcome to save your presentation as a PDF and send it to me. I have the list of all of your attendees and also the ones that were unable to attend today. So I can send that out to everyone. So yes, if you send the PDF to me, I can send it to everyone along with the recording of the presentation.
Okay, we'll make those adjustments.
Sounds
And then
great.
get
Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. When will the case by case be determined?
I probably need a little bit more clarification on which slide that was referring to.
Okay. Next question. When will the bidders list become a form? It could cause contractors to add well over 100 entries per bid, which could take hours to submit a bid.
Yes, so we definitely do not want that to happen, and we do understand that there could be hundreds of entries for large projects on these bidders lists. So, but before we make it, whatever we decide to do, we're going to make sure that again, we test it and we get the industry buy-in, that it's not too burdensome. To the extent possible, if there are things that we already know, like certainly with that's why for DBE, we're not going to ask for the race and gender or the size, because we know that already, but we won't necessarily know that for all of the non-DBEs. But then again, if we can always say, say like a drop down listing all the non-DBEs, and then if we know that information, we don't have to ask for it again. So we can at least say that. Those are the kinds of things we're thinking of doing that will make this process as painless as possible.
Great, thank you, David. Okay, next question. If a DBE firm has more than one NAICS code, do you need them to be all listed, or just the NAICS codes pertaining to the work type they are doing for the project?
Let's see, are we talking about the bidders list here? Probably. I mean, yeah, I think we need to probably say that the NAICS code would have to be, I would say nothing really incidental, but certainly the majority, the large items of work, probably, so if the DBE is doing multiple different areas under different codes, then we'll need to see those. But if the DBE has to do a little bit of landscaping, just incidental to the project, we wouldn't need to see that. So, but certainly on the affirmation forms, we're still going to be looking to make sure the DBEs do have the right codes. And we'll be doing more training on this, because we definitely want to make sure that it's easier right now than it currently is to know which NAICS codes go with which work. So another drop down we could definitely, we're planning on doing is all of the ODOT work types will have something that corresponds them to a specific NAICS code. I wouldn't worry too much about getting the NAICS codes exactly correct on the bidders list, but I would definitely keep doing your efforts on making sure the DBEs that you're going to use have the right NAICS codes for your affirmations.
Great, thank you, David. We did get confirmation that was what the attendee was referring to, so thank you for that. What if you have filed a tax extension? Does that impact the yearly declaration?
Yeah, the question's similar to the one I just answered, and hopefully we'll get some more clarification on that, because right now we do accept the tax returns, but I'm thinking most likely they're going to want you to produce some sort of documentation of your cash receipts for the year. Perhaps something that you're using to prepare your tax document. But I do understand that you may not have all that together. So actually, I'm going to be speaking tomorrow with USDOT and getting some questions clarified. So I may have more to send out after the presentation on Friday. If I do get clarification on that, I'll make sure that it gets out quickly. And we also can possibly include it in our newsletter, because I do know that that does happen quite often.
Great, thank you so much. I just want to let all of the people know there have been a lot of questions from people who would really like to have a copy of the presentation after. So anyone who has asked that question, because it seems like they all came through right close to the same time. So they are intending to get that presentation out to you all via PDF. Don't want anyone to feel like they're being ignored. Okay, when a DBE company we are using uses another DEB company under them, does that still count towards our goal as the prime?
All right, so if a prime is using a DBE and that DBE is using another DBE, yes, that would still, just like it currently does, usually, and in most cases that does count. So however, if a DBE uses a non-DBE sub, then that DBE's, potentially going to have issues with commercially useful function, at least for, that they probably we wouldn't give them credit for the part that's being subbed out to a non-DBE. And we have to make sure that the DBE is doing enough work to be performing a commercially useful function. So they can't sub out too much, but they can sub out, small pieces of their work, certainly.
Great, thank you, David.
And just keep in mind that we only allow tiering to the second level, so subs and sub-subs. We don't have any, other than on Brent Spence. We don't allow tiering beyond the second tier.
Okay, next question. If a prime contractor hires a DBE firm to truck bulk material to a job site, does the trucking of the material count as 100% toward the goal?
If it's just trucking, then yes. But if it's supply and with a trucking component, it's 60%.
Okay, thank you. We have a follow-up question to the tax question. They want to know if they would need to provide that documentation to all the states or just their home state.
Yeah, so you will still have to provide documentation of your gross receipts to every state that you're certified in. It's just now the declaration of eligibility date will be the same in every state. So it's no longer the date that you got certified with that other state. It'll be, if you're an Ohio firm, it will be the date you were certified with us that you submit the declaration of eligibility with the documentation to every single state.
Great, thank you, Jolita. Okay, please clarify you gave an acronym, the NAICS code for distributor versus the code for dealer, so they can accurately find the subcontractors on the DBE directory.
There won't be a separate, there'll be the same NAICS codes for whether they're a distributor or a regular dealer. So like I said, that's just it's going to be something that the expectation is really that the primes get the information from the DBEs directly as to what their capacities are, how they plan on fulfilling that transaction, whether they want to do it as a regular dealer or a distributor. And that's also part of the questions that are going to be asked with that regular dealer distributor affirmation form. that will make sure that it's clear to both the DBE, the prime, and to ODOT how that DBE plans on fulfilling that work. Now, of course, it's all subject to that our compliance office performing the cuff review to determine if that really gets counted that way. But at the beginning, we are going to rely on the answers that the DBE gives on their form. But we always have the ability to question if a DBE that only has the wholesale trade agents and brokers code says they're going to be a distributor, then we can't accept that because they don't have the right code.
We're going to be doing probably a decent amount of education and outreach as this gets rolled out. David, you might have said it in your presentation, but until we get the proposal note, correct me if I'm wrong, it will not apply to our projects until that
You're
proposal note is in the projects. So
everything is status quo for now.
yeah, so we're working out a lot of the details internally, and then we'll be reaching out. But generally, if you're a regular dealer, you should be good to go to be a distributor as well in that same product line if needed, because of the way the NACS, because of the way the NACS code system is set up. Now, if you're just a broker, it is a possibility that you will need different NACS codes for items that you regularly are a distributor for. Hopefully that helps and doesn't cause more confusion, because we know this is a difficult topic.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I will let you, as the presenters know, that most likely as a result of this being such a large webinar, there are still about 20 questions to go. And I mean, we are reaching, a good while. I don't know how long you want your attendees to wait, or if you want, if we want to go through them, we can absolutely do that. Or do you want to ask them to email questions, or how would you like to do that? We can stay on as long as you want.
I'm looking at I think we can answer a few more questions, but I do understand if people have to get off. It looks like we have 177 people on right now, and I don't expect everyone to be able to stay an extra 15 minutes, but these questions are important to be addressed. And so, David, I don't know if you have another meeting or not, but perhaps we can stay on 10 to 15.
We can stay on for a little longer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So let's just keep moving through the questions. Is the bidders list required for non-DEB suppliers and subcontractors, or only subcontractors?
That's a question that I think we're still probably going to have to determine. Definitely non-DBE subcontractors. But I'm going to have to probably get back to you on that question about the non-DBE suppliers.
Okay. And just so you know, there will be copies of the questions, so they will be able to reach back out to you to answer some of the questions if you need more clarification. Yeah. So I do not think that we asked this question. Why are contractors required to enter the information for all subcontractors interested in pricing the project?
Why are contractors? This is like why do we have the bidders list requirement? I guess that might be the question. It's because part of the reason is we need that information for use in our overall goal setting. And part of the reason is because we want to find out more about who these subs are that are interested in working on our projects. And third reason is because that we have to collect this information and submit it to the USDOT on an annual basis.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, sometimes it can be a little tricky when people are trying to type out their questions and they want to get them in a hurry. So thank you for
Right.
working through that. Um, is there a date in which all states are required to adopt the changes to interstate certifications, and should they have been adopted already?
Yeah, so May 9th is technically when every rule went into place, but we know that there were a lot of changes, and so many states are needing to phase in those changes. Generally speaking, every state likely should be adhering to the 10 days. They should be, doing the certification based on the limited information. I will say, I think the JOC annual declaration date may take a little bit more time because we have to gather a lot of information in order to make that change, and it also may take a change in a system in order to collect the dates, but you would be more than welcome if you submitted your declaration on your JOC date to another state, or if you reached out to the other state to let them know your JOC date. We've had a few firms do that. We've had other states reach out to us trying to get JOC dates. So there isn't a specific way to implement that part. But generally, if you're having issues with interstate in other states and they ask you to provide your full file, I think you can go back to them and say, with the new rule, I'm not required to do that.
Wonderful, thank you for answering that question. Next question. For the 51% needed from stock, is that only for non-bulk specialty items or for the total DBE goal?
That's only for non-bulk, non-specialty items.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, someone is asking, will I now have to prove that I'm economically disadvantaged for the next certification renewal?
No, so technically there's really not a renewal. It's an annual declaration of eligibility, and that's where we confirm. If you were to go under a certification review, which we are doing a lot of that in conjunction with NAAQS code additions, notice of changes, things like that, because we do need to get updated on-site reviews, you will be most likely asked to submit your updated personal net worth at that time. And in that case, just to get our records up to date. But you don't have to submit it with your annual declaration of eligibility or anything like that. We will ask you when we need one.
Okay, thank you. You are getting a note of appreciation as your next question. After that, if you are certified in multiple states and one of the states removes you from their list because you exceeded the NAICS code limit for the size for that task, but you are still in the parameters for ODOT, would that affect your DBE qualification to work for ODOT?
So if you're over the size standard in one state, you're over it in every state. So it would just impact the NAAQS code. It wouldn't impact anything else with your certification. But generally speaking, if you're over a NAAQS code, they are alerting every state that you're over that NAAQS code. Some states have already started doing that.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, we're getting there. Is there any way we can track what primes are reaching their goals and to what percentage they have reached or fallen short?
Yeah, we are currently have a report on our public website where you can look up any contract and see the goal, and you can see who the prime is and where they currently are. But we would like to eventually have that more on for all the contracts rather than one at a time. So I think that's something that we can definitely do going forward, and it's something that I'll be working on in the next, let's say, hopefully by the end of the year. because we have the data, we just need to put the information out there. And it's public record.
Wonderful, thank you for that answer. Next question, is third-party shipping still allowed from the DBE supplier location?
So if you have a DBE supplier that has the goods, it's a bulk item or a specialty item, that in order to get the 60% credit, that DBE has to deliver the material. It can't be a third party. But if a third party does ship it, that's where it's more like a distributor. And so that's an interesting question, because usually distributors never touch the product, but you're saying if the DBE actually has it but will not be delivering it. If it's a product that the DBE has in inventory, they do not have to also ship it. So yeah, I mean, if the DBE, if it's a DBE that has say a warehouse, they have the product in inventory, they do not have to, they can have a third party that delivers it, yes, and still get the 60% credit. If they're a manufacturer and they manufacture the items, they do not have to also ship them. They can have a third party do that. So I'm picturing a flow chart here to help with some of these questions, or it's like sort of a choose your own adventure type thing, because there's okay, we start with this, and then who's going to deliver it, and what does that do to the actual amount that counts towards the goal? So that will be helpful, I think.
And then we do plan to, the questions that we didn't get to, we do plan to get those to you guys as well, create a Q&A document. So the video, the PowerPoint, and the Q&As, we'll be sending those out to all the attendees. So we do appreciate everyone attending. Thank you for your participation with the questions and for your undivided attention. So we will talk to you within a week or so with the documents, and we appreciate your time. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.